We have a tweet from Senator Ron Johnson. The U.S. Secret Service Senate briefing was unbelievably uninformative. Only 4 questions were allowed. The rest of us are supposed to submit questions. I already have, awaiting a response, not holding my breath. We've got this. Colin, I'm sorry, let me pull up Senator Mike Lee. He says, Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle needs to step down immediately. Today's mostly information-free briefing only confirmed that. What little information she gave us was at once deeply troubling and glaringly incomplete. At least 3 of us, Senator Blackburn, Cruz, and me, had sought recognition to ask questions and were in the queue when they abruptly cut the call short. The Secret Service agreed to give us this briefing. Normally, federal agencies that agree to brief us will do their best to answer all of our questions, even if it takes a little while. Never in my 13 years in the Senate have I seen a briefing end after answering only 4 questions. If I'm not mistaken, 3 of the 4 questions allowed were asked by Democrats. So why hold the briefing if they weren't going to tell us anything? Why the hell did Secret Service let Trump walk on stage before resolving the potential threat that they had by then identified? How many requests did Secret Service assign additional agents to the Trump campaign have been ignored or rejected over the last 2 years? Why wasn't a single agent positioned on that roof? Would Secret Service ever let Joe Biden walk on stage before resolving a specific known security threat? Has that ever happened? Which of its obvious failures will Secret Service try to blame on climate change? That's a good one. What do these Secret Service failures say to America's foreign adversaries? And what kinds of horrible things will they encourage? Once the perception sets in that the security surrounding a presidential candidate can be circumvented this easily, should we expect to see more assassination attempts? Why isn't Biden taking action against his own Secret Service director and Homeland Security Secretary? If this incident doesn't warrant firing some people, what does? Were they trying to half-ass this? I'm not even sure this qualifies as a half-assed effort. Is there such a thing as quarter-assing? I want to point this out.
I hope you submitted these.
I look. Tucker Carlson predicted we're in assassination territory. They have changed laws to prosecute Trump. They have created fake criminal charges to prosecute Trump. I want to stress this to the utmost degree. The hush money case against Donald Trump had no statutory basis. It was expired. It was a misdemeanor. I think perhaps for the first time, Barnes, or correct me if I'm wrong, they have assigned a crime to Donald Trump without due process by stating that Trump committed a secondary offense for which you can charge him for a first offense, without ever having a due process court hearing to prove beyond a reasonable doubt Trump committed any crimes. And then they upgrade to this felony. They have taken unprecedented actions to hinder and stop Donald Trump and ruin his life. Tucker Carlson said they have failed, and now we're looking at assassination territory. So when all of these things happen, and we get to this point, I have one question for everybody and for everybody watching. Do you believe Trump derangement syndrome exists? First question. The second, based on everything we've seen from Libs of TikTok's account, do you believe there are American citizens who want Donald Trump to die? And third question, is it possible any of those people work for the Secret Service?
Trump derangement syndrome certainly exists. Have you seen Keith Olbermann? Have you seen people like Joy Reid? These people who constantly tout and do make the comparisons of him to Hitler, what have you. TDS certainly exists. Question number 2, what was it?
Are there people in this country who want Donald Trump dead?
Libs of TikTok has done such a phenomenal job in highlighting these people, and many of them ultimately getting fired from their jobs.
And the last question is it possible any of these people work for the Secret Service?
I will say my hometown, right? I'm from Tennessee. We had a girl from Dutch Bros, which is like a coffee place. She tweeted on there or put on Facebook the same thing. Several people are tweeting, right? Dang, I wish the shooter didn't miss. There's no way someone like her works for the Secret Service. And I feel like that's a lot of what we're seeing is just...
Didn't Libs of TikTok highlight an FBI staffer who did express similar sentiment?
Several staffers on the Hill, members of Congress, senators.
If these people truly believe that Donald Trump is Hitler, as they've screamed for 8 years, and these people have been radicalized, when you see someone go on Facebook and say these things, it is not unreasonable to conclude similar sentiments are held by people in Secret Service or law enforcement, and they are willing to take the utmost egregious actions.
TDS, it's just an iteration of mass formation psychosis or group psychology. Of course it exists. You call it TDS, but it has another actual clinical term. And you whip people up into a frenzy enough over a long enough period of time, and you will get groups of people to believe absurdities and be able to commit atrocities.
I do want to say real quick, there actually is a medical term for TDS. It's officially called, and this is true, Trump anxiety disorder. I'm not kidding.
Yeah. Well, it's an iteration. There's something called folie à deux, folie à trois, when two people go crazy together.
And they make it worse. I mean, there's like a famous set of twins that did this, right? They pushed each other farther.
It's called folie à deux, which is French for folly by two.
Viva, great point. And I would even add to that point that you made that both of these kind of derangement syndromes and this mass psychosis were created by the intel agencies that, of course, use the institutions, use the universities, social media, and big media in order to propagate a lot of this kind of psychosis over the American people. So even if you don't want to connect all the dots with the conspiracies of what happened here, they're responsible for creating this situation and this scenario, which is a part of a larger divide and conquer agenda.
Well, everybody knows what MK Ultra is, Operation MK Ultra, what they did.
It's a real thing. It's not a conspiracy. They literally tried to get people to assassinate someone by controlling their minds. And they were doing experiments with that.
Experiments rooted in McGill University in Montreal at the Al Memorial Institution. But the other thing that you mentioned, and people also need to be sensitive to, like go to the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot, or as I call it, the Fednapping plot. They get vulnerable people who are mentally unwell, mentally unstable.
Don't have any friends. Social anxiety. Don't have good friends.
Absolutely. Now, I'd like to know what the connection was between FBI intelligence and the assassin, or the would-be assassin in this case. I guarantee you there is one.
But they won't find out because the phone has been wiped. The phone has been somehow wiped, so they can't get any data or information out of it magically now.
I think this is why it's so telling that Kimberly Cheeto, the director of the Secret Service, has yet, as far as I know, to hold a press conference on this, right? She has had time to do an ABC interview, but she hasn't been able to sort of stand up in front of a camera and say, here's what we know. I mean, even, smaller agencies, when there are, tragedies, communities, right? And even if they say nothing, they're like, there was an incident, we are investigating it, we're not releasing else. They have the dignity to at least stand before their community and say, here is are acknowledging that something has gone wrong. We are investigating it. It's frustrating when you're a reporter because you're like, I know that you know more than you're saying. And they'll say, to protect the whatever privacy of whoever. Kimberly Cheeto doesn't even bother to do that. And I think that's interesting, right? Either they are such a disorganized agency that they cannot manage themselves and are possibly controlled by someone else, or DHS, which controls the Secret Service, and Kimberly Cheeto are actively aware of how obviously they were involved, and they are not willing to talk about it because they know there's no way to cover it up.
Who heads the DHS? Is it a certain Alejandro Mayorkas?
And I don't know if you know what he's famous for, but
an invasion of America.
He single-handedly allowed an invasion of the American southern border, and he is not sorry about it. And that's the thing. He does not care about national security. Why would he care about the security of any elected officials, especially Donald Trump?
I went on a bit of a rage tweeting binge last night because I watched that Kim Cheeto interview. And the way the nonchalantness with which she describes it, like, yes, the buck stops with me. We'll make sure this never happens again. I'm like, it never happened again. You talk like you left the front door open and the dog got out of the house.
When she says, well, it'll never happen again, I'm always like, but what was your goal?
No, it never happened again. It should never have happened in the first place. You need to resign, and there need to be investigations into you, and you need to be potentially charged and potentially locked up. Oh, it'll never happen again. And no, I'm not resigning.
She doesn't need to resign. She needs to be fired.
She needs to be arrested, charged, and imprisoned. And I'll say it, because it's not excusable. Oh, it's my first day.
Speaker Mike Johnson, during an interview with Fox Today, was asked about this, and he said, I'm going to call for her resignation. I mean, there are a lot of pressure coming, especially from
Senator
Republicans, right, to say that this is not acceptable. But the answer is she is sort of protected by the Biden administration. I mean, we know what has happened because of illegal immigration in this country, and Mayorkas is still up.
Well, if they would meaningfully investigate it, that could substantially help. I mean, the reason why we know about MK Ultra is because of the House Intelligence Committee, the
Church Commission hearings.
The Church Commission hearing, the House Committee on Assassinations is how we found out about all of that. And to Tim's question about do we believe high-ranking government officials have TDS, well, we know from Russiagate that that's what happened. We know that Mueller was filled with that. We know the first and second impeachments were filled with that. So, I mean, the Secret Service files went missing after January 6th.
No, I would push back on that. I don't think the first, second impeachments were Trump derangement syndrome. I think those were individuals who were of clear mind and were intentionally targeting Donald Trump with lies and manipulation. Trump derangement syndrome people going on social media wishing for the death of Donald Trump, they are brainwashed and have shattered minds from fake news. But when it comes to, say, the Ukraine scandal, that was Joe Biden engaging in a quid pro quo with the president of Ukraine in the video where he famously says, if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting the $1 billion. They fabricate a scenario to blame that on Donald Trump instead. And they said Trump was digging up dirt on his political opponents. The fascinating thing is Joe Biden's on camera admitting to a crime by their own standard. And when Donald Trump tried to investigate that crime, they accused Trump of the crime and impeached him for it. That's not derangement. That's strategic.
If I'm...
It's confession to protection at every level. I mean, but you see it with the Vindman. We see it with the head of counterintelligence. You look at Peter Strzok. You look at James Baker. You look at James Comey. I mean,
Smith fabricated evidence to put an innocent man in prison.
Yes. I mean that's and these are some of the highest ranking law enforcement people in the country and some of the highest ranking State Department people in the country.
Now I will ask another question for you guys. Did you see the reporting about how there are members of federal law enforcement who are terrified and have expressed that they will flee the country if Trump wins? You guys have seen this reporting?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is it possible any of those people don't want to leave the country and may take other actions instead?
Well, let me. I want to throw in a little doom pill, black pill here, going back to Kim Cheadle. Her name is Cheadle, by the way. I mean, nomen es omen. Let's cheat a little to win this election. She was so nonchalant. It enraged me, and I'm a polite, docile Canadian. It seemed to be so nonchalant and so downgrading what actually happened to trigger somebody. It's like, I'm going to go out and do something now because this is so insulting. My president nearly got his head blown off, and you're talking about well, it'll never happen again. So I believe that she's deliberately antagonistically being nonchalant about what happened to try to provoke someone to do something stupid so they can then say, oh, woe was me, we're the victims now.
And after she said the buck stops with me, we're in charge of this, but that building was actually being secured by local law enforcement, right? She's not actually trying to take responsibility. It's crazy to me that there would be a building so close to the president that she's like, you guys take hold of this. We're responsible for security, but Riley, can you just secure that area for us? Thanks. I mean, there's no desire to be held accountable at all. Thanks for watching this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to check out the live show Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. on this channel. Subscribe and we'll see you all there.